Frog fans, welcome in to a special episode of the Frogs Insider Podcast. Jamie Plunkett here next to, actually,
in
Melissa
person.
Treewasser
Cool.
in person here in Las Vegas.
We might be doing more of this here.
Maybe once in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while here at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas for Big 12 Media Days. We just spent the entire day hearing from Sonny Dykes and the players from TCU. We heard some Mike Gundy chaos statements about Ollie Gordon III and his DUI.
Body weight, Jamie.
It's all about body weight. Who hasn't had 4 beers and driven, Melissa, is really the takeaway from Mike Gundy today.
Yikes.
But we got so much to talk about. We have a QB1 officially, according to both Sonny Dykes and Josh Hoover.
Correct.
And on top of that, he's healthy.
Yeah, he looks good. Healthy enough to cause some havoc in the back of your interviews, too.
Yes, kicking Jack Besh in the back of the knee while I'm trying to ask him about, his quarterback and his quarterback's leadership.
Yeah.
It was really great timing.
If you're not following us on the Frogs Insider Instagram, go check that out on our stories. It was pretty funny.
Yes.
Jack liked it, so we'll say that. He thought it was funny.
We chatted with Super Frog, wordy guy.
Yeah, God,
Talks
that
a lot.
would not shut up. It's like he's like a third on our show.
It's crazy. So, folks, this is the Frogs Insider Podcast. Before we really dive into the day, thank you so much to our sponsor, Hills Half Acre Stadium Goods. You can find everything you need for a TCU game day over at hellshalfacresg.com. When you check out whatever you buy, whether it's a polo, a hoodie, a koozie, whatever you need for game day, leave a little comment in the box that say Jamie and Melissa sent you, so that the good folks over there at Hell's Half Acre know that we're talking about them, know that you heard about them from us.
Jamie,
Yep.
I have to start with the question. You are wearing your sunglasses indoors. We're in Vegas. I just want to clarify. You did not arrive here till this morning, so this is not a, oh no, we've already started Vegasing too soon situation.
Shine so bright.
Yeah,
shine so bright, Melissa. Stars shine bright here at Big 12 Media Days.
I got here last night.
You did.
But did
and
not.
You made it
I don't
here
need the
this
sunglasses.
Morning.
Yeah, so I did quickly lose $100 at the roulette table, unlike Caleb Fox.
Big shout out to Deputy Athletic Director for External Affairs, Ryan Peck,
Yeah.
for loaning me eye drops. This is the first day that I've worn contacts in probably 6 months, and my eyes feel bad.
Yeah, it's hot.
Feel bad.
I have not gotten contacts yet, or I mean, I've not gotten eye drops yet. But the pain is real, even indoors. It is 116 degrees, I think, outside right now.
It's
warm.
116
outside right now.
It's
so
warm.
We're here to deal with the pain for the people.
Deal with the pain for the people in July, so that when everybody's out there at Naaman G. Carter Stadium together, watching and supporting the Frogs, solidarity. Because we'll be in the AC press box at that point, so we got to get our
I'll be on the field.
We got to get our heat in now.
Yeah. I also want to just apologize for the terrible audio quality. For some reason, the alt adult rock that the Big 12 has been playing during this conference all day is still blaring. And we're standing next to each other. I'm sure this sounds like absolute just garbage people.
No, it's going to sound great. It's going to sound great. But yes, they have been playing extremely loud music all day, which has been really good for audio purposes.
Yeah.
So big technical awesomeness there from the Big 12. But Melissa, let's stop vamping and jump right into the storylines of the day. Sonny Dykes was the first head coach to talk. But before Sonny Dykes got on that stage, Brett Yormark did. And he did a little bit of bragging.
Yeah.
He talked a lot about what's happened in the 24 months that he's been commissioner. And frankly, he's done a tremendous job. He welcomed in the 4 schools that Bob Bowlesby brought in, and UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, thank you. He added 4 more schools, the 4 corner schools in Arizona, Arizona State, not BYU, God, Utah and Colorado.
BYU on the brain.
They're right there. They're right there next to each other. They're almost touching, BYU and Utah.
I'm not going to make it.
He talked a lot about the media deals that they've made, the partnerships that they've forged. He announced some new ones today. And he said very explicitly that his goal is not only to have the Big 12 be one of the 3 best conferences in the country, but eventually for the Big 12 to be the best conference in the country. What did you think of the commissioner's comments today and just his assertiveness as he was kind of talking about all their accomplishments?
Well, I think it's super important right now to show a strong united front.
Yeah.
Obviously, with all of the uncertainty and realignment and all of the questions that fans are asking across college football, you want your commissioner to come out and make strong declarative statements, and also to have some innovation and some ideas that show that the conference is going to continue to look forward. When he said we want to be number 1, I don't think he said so with the idea that the Big 12 is going to overtake the SEC or Big 10 in any way, shape, or form. perform, but more so of if we aren't trying to be the best every single day, what are we even doing here? And
Right.
I think that his confidence, his innovation, he mentioned multiple times how important it is for the conference to have a foothold in places like Las Vegas, on the West Coast, in Mexico, and internationally. He is one thing we know about Brett Yormark. He is not going to stop trying to put the Big 12 at the forefront. And I think he's also continually marketing himself. This is a man who I could absolutely see being the commissioner of college football at some point. And he wants to consistently show that he's not only on top of what his conference is doing, but the landscape of the sport as a whole. And I thought that he gave an air of confidence and also of forward thinking that this conference is going to need to stay a Big 3 conference when the ACC blows up here in a matter of weeks.
Or months or whatever.
Or years, who knows, but eventually.
Let's be real, by 2027, I don't think the ACC is going to look the same as it does right now. But I think one of the things that I took away from Yormark today is he echoed a sentiment that he had the first day, actually before the first day that he was commissioner, at that Big 12 Media Days at Jerry World back in 2022, where he said the Big 12 is open for business.
Yeah.
He said the same thing today, and while he didn't essentially, he wasn't necessarily alluding to expansion, conference expansion with that statement, he was talking about some of that innovation that you referenced, specifically private equity. And he talked multiple times today, both on the stage and in some scrums, about the need for a partner moving forward that will help you be forward thinking and support some of that forward thinking financially, so that the Big 12 can remain a stable functioning conference both in the short term and in the long term. He noted that while they've had a lot of conversations about private equity and with private equity groups, they're not close to a deal, but they are exploring ways for PE to be a part of the conference in a way that isn't, long-term harmful to the conference. And I think that forward thinking and that innovation when it comes to private equity probably scares a lot of people, but I felt reassured by the way Brett Yormark was talking about private equity today.
Yeah, I think, again, you have to be able to keep up with the revenue, right? And that's the big thing. He mentioned multiple times, Fox and ESPN stepping up alongside to support the Big 12, and I think kind of gave them a call out as, hey, you guys have been doing this. Don't let us fall to the wayside as the SEC and Big 10 take over. He also talked about other revenue streams, personal seat licenses, something that we are all familiar with from professional sports. One of the big things he harped on, which to me doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but I think it's one of his key things, is sponsorship patches on officials' uniforms. Umpires.
Refs,
something
officials,
that
all of those things.
I wouldn't be shocked if we see as early as this season, certainly by next season. The sponsorships that the Big 12 had. This is the Big 12 Media Days sponsored by Totino's, which really is upsetting to me considering I have not seen a single Totino.
There are no pizza rolls.
There are no pizza rolls in this entirety.
We walked through that whole buffet lunch line, and we had
nothing.
mini sandwiches and mini sliders and vegan wraps.
Which
I did not select.
You did not. You left them for the vegans. It's nice of you.
Shout out to the vegans and the vegetarians. But
Where's my pizza roll?
How many? 45 Totino's logos up there on,
more than that.
On the big screen.
Yeah. No Totino's.
And not a single pizza roll in the house.
Not a Totino in the house.
What the hell?
He also talked about partnering with Microsoft for the Surface tablets. I think that is a great option as well. So there'll be tablets on the field and in the coaching boxes. There are a lot of the Big 12. You said open for business. You're exactly right. They are looking for revenue streams and under every rock, behind every corner. We were talking to a national writer, and one of the things he mentioned is kind of just selling the soul of college football. And he wished Yormark would have just flat out said it. Look, that's where we are, unfortunately. I hate it, but you can't not do it.
Look, it's nice to hold a moral high ground, and it's nice to, and I say that as someone who has gotten on his moral soapbox many times over my writing career. I look back at some of those open letters I wrote at Frogs of War, and I cringed.
The one where you threatened to blow the whole thing up without warning me first. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that was a little tough.
Reading that one at softball practice, I was like, oh, God, what has he done?
I know a thing or two about moral high grounds, and I understand where they come from, but the reality is that at this point in time, those moral high grounds aren't based in reality, and those moral high grounds are going to get you killed. It's the same conversation on a larger scale that we've been having about the TCU-SMU rivalry, I think, for the last couple of years, where what is the inherent value or benefit of continuing to play that game? And for TCU, the value kept decreasing and decreasing and decreasing until they made the decision to pull the plug on it temporarily. Now, with SMU in the ACC, maybe things change in the future, who knows? But this idea of investing and finding partnerships that allow you to sustain and exist for a longer period of time, it's the way that you have to function in this modern era of college athletics in order to survive, not only at a conference level, but at the individual university level as well.
It's change or die. We were talking to a TCU administrator about that. You have to be willing. You don't have to necessarily sell all that matters to you. TCU's not going to stop being an educational university first and foremost.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you aren't trying to keep up, you're going to fall behind. You're going to get left behind. And we all believe that TCU is still positioning itself for a life outside of the Big 12 potentially down the line too. So if the Big 12 is continuing to bring eyeballs and continuing to bring revenue streams, that helps not just the conference, but the individual members of that conference too. So does it suck a little bit? Absolutely. Is this the same game that we all fell in love with decades ago? No, but am I going to give up on college football because there's Pizza Roll sponsoring my media days with no actual pizza rolls and there's patches on my officials' uniforms? No. Do I love private equity? Absolutely not, but I'm going to do a wait and see on that one.
We'll wait and see. And, I think that the stigma and the cons around private equity are warranted and deserved at this point. And I don't think... maybe this is my moral high ground, is that I don't think the leadership of this conference specifically would intentionally damage the long-term viability of the Big 12 to make a quick buck.
Yeah, I agree. I think other things to kind of take away from that is Yormark really wanted to emphasize that this is the deepest and most balanced conference in the country. I think that is something completely and totally arguable.
I think you can make that argument.
Yeah, I absolutely do. He talked about star power, something that you get a real feel for the star power when you have a media days conference. You want to see where people gravitate. And I will say here, you didn't get that sense. Now, tomorrow, when I show up at Allegiant Stadium and Dion's in town, I think that's where you're going to see that gravitas.
Everybody's going to be talking to the Colorado punter tomorrow.
Yes. But I do think that as the season goes on and you start to see just how good the quarterbacks in this league are, just how good the running backs in this league are, how good the coaches. I mean, there is not there's maybe one bad coach in this entire conference. I won't say who.
No. You can't lob a grenade into the trenches like that and not say who it is.
Listen,
what does it rhyme with?
Batterfield.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying, if you were going to rank the coaches from 1 to 16, there's a guy who I think everyone puts 16.
Well, it's not Mike Gundy.
And it's not. Oh, are we okay? So first of all, I think we need, before we jump into Mike Gundy here, he's getting the mullet back. The mullet's coming back, and
honestly,
I think with the mullet,
that's the best version of himself is when he's got a mullet.
and he is going wheels off, mullet back.
It's not like he's not been wheels off in the past. He's just leaning into the skid at this point with his comments about Gordon.
Here's what I think is
that and I think he was talking. We were back here filming some other stuff. I think he started talking about Election Day at one point. Whatever. Just can't help but step on every landmine possible.
I think the thing that was really interesting to me is that Mike Gundy said the thing that college coaches have been thinking. High school. I mean, I've had to make these decisions before. Is that when one person makes a bad decision, do you risk punishing the entire organization for that one person's decision? And he flat out said, I'm not going to do that for my football team. Ollie Gordon is going to play every single football game that he is healthy enough to play, and there will be no suspension for his DUI, which, again, I don't think surprises anybody, but for him to flat out come out and say, I don't want to lose football games, I'm going to play the guy that got a DUI, and then go on an absolute rant about why it wasn't that big of a deal.
Just calculating blood alcohol level based on weight and percentage of the beverages. But he did clarify that he wasn't trying to justify what Ollie Gordon did. He was just giving context to why he made the decision he made to not suspend Ollie Gordon.
He was just talking about because it was his normal Saturday night.
Which ended with, that means he probably had 2, 3, 4 beers. I've done that 1,000 times, I believe is the quote. And it's like, Gundy, brother, you're not making the point that you think you're making when you say something like that.
And, I think this just comes down to TCU has been in its share of situations like this, and they've handled it different ways depending on how quickly they've been caught, frankly, right? Like we saw this Vontae Turpin situation. When it was public, he was suspended. When it wasn't, he wasn't.
Right.
And I think that this is obviously a very, very public thing. So for Mike Gundy, and of course it was Mike Gundy, to come out and say, this was bad, but I don't care that he did it. I'm going to play him anyways. But the one kind of thing where I'm like, okay, I can respect this aspect of it, and I hate drunk driving. I've been personally touched by drunk driving on multiple occasions. I've lost really important people in my life to drunk driving, so I'm not willing to excuse this. He didn't hide Ollie Gordon. He brought him here.
True.
And he made him answer. Does that absolve him of his sins? Absolutely not. Do you hope that maybe this is what helps Ollie Gordon realize why it was such? Is it more impactful to have to answer those questions than it is to miss a football game?
No, I don't
probably
think so.
not.
I don't think so. But we're not in charge of Oklahoma State football, so ultimately we can pontificate all day long, and we're not the decision makers there. We're not the decision makers for TCU football either, but we feel, at least I feel, much more informed about what TCU football can look like in 2024 after the conversations that we had today, Melissa. So let's jump right in, and let's start with Sonny Dykes and his comments up on the podium. He sat down, first head coach of the day, and said, "Summer is over." It's 116 degrees outside, so I don't know.
Yeah, summer is not over, my friend.
Over, but his point was it's fully back to the grindstone. Fall camp starts in a couple weeks, and it's time to hit the ground running. What did you take away from Sonny's opening statements? He talked about the defense. He talked about the mistakes in 2023 that led to the record that was subpar. He covered a lot of ground in his opening statement.
I think one of the things that we've all been questioning is what does the leadership on this team looks like, and how are they going to put players in position to succeed? You can put it on yourself as a coach all you want, but if you don't have a plan to actually fix the issues, it doesn't do you any good. He addressed the leadership. I thought it was super interesting, the point that he brought up, that in the past you kind of always waited for the Max Duggins and the D Winters and the Garrett Wallace to pass the leadership on to the next generation.
Yeah.
But when you turn over your roster by nearly 50% every season due to the transfer portal, who's sticking around to do that? It's really hard to put it on the players to lead. And so he talked about taking ownership of helping players grow as leaders as a coaching staff, and that they're being more involved. He said that they're taking classes, they're doing leadership seminars, they're actively trying to create leaders in their program, and I think that that's a really positive step forward for a team and a program that was severely lacking in that area previously.
It is, or it was, and for him, today wasn't the first day that we've heard Sonny Dykes talk about the leadership deficiencies on last year's roster either. That's been something that he noted even in the middle of last season. He was waiting for some guys to grow up and grow into those leadership roles more. He mentioned it today. Josh Hoover mentioned leadership today. Caleb Fox mentioned leadership today. Jack Besh mentioned a ton of leadership today.
I can't wait till we talk about Jack Besh. What a character.
It seems like this spring was a really unifying opportunity for this football program to realize that not everything is handed to you. In fact, nothing is handed to you. You have to have the grit and determination to be ready to play the game.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you can dictate things like the team did in 2022, where it seemed like every bounce went their way. Your effort can help push those luck opportunities.
Yeah, you create your own
favor.
luck in football.
And it seemed like the Frogs are on a much better leadership foundation this year that will maybe propel them to that opportunity.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that regard, is that you do get the opportunity to create you do right by the football gods do right by you, right? Like that's normally how it works. So it seems to be no longer an open secret, but something that coaches and players are actively working to improve, and so hopefully that will reach its goal.
Yeah.
I also thought that he talked a lot about putting guys in position to succeed, and so when I asked Josh Hoover what that meant, we asked Sonny Dykes what that meant, and basically I like Josh Hoover's answers. He talked about having gotten those 6 games last year, being able to sit down with Kendall Briles for them to analyze where they're efficient, where they're not efficient, what works for Josh's game, what doesn't, because remember, the game plan was built around Chandler Morris once again, Chandler Morris was not the guy executing the game plan at the end of the season, and so we've talked often, we've heard a lot of fans talk about, Kendall Briles needing to be more flexible with his offensive game plan, but if the plan is to start Josh Hoover, which we'll talk about more in a minute here, and those two have been working together to be able to maximize Hoover's effectiveness within his skill set, I think that that's also a positive step forward. You'll hope for some more flexibility, but they definitely have a much better understanding of each other this year than they have in the past, and we've mentioned it multiple times. This is the first time we've had our starting quarterbacks had consecutive offensive coordinators going into this quarter.
Since before Sonny Dykes was the head coach. I mean, it's been a minute since we've had some consistency at the OC position, and I think that above all else will allow this offense to take a step forward, because you cannot.
We don't want it to take a step back.
Well, certainly not, for multiple reasons, most of which that music video. Here's 2 of my takeaways from what Sonny Dykes had to say today. First, when he was talking about the offense, he talked a lot about the execution issues. He talked a lot about the efficiency issues. When he talked about the defense, he talked a lot about the scheme.
Yeah.
He spent a significant amount of time today talking about the four-man front that Andy Avalos has reinstalled in this defense. He talked a lot about the importance of getting pressure on quarterbacks. In fact, I'm trying to pull up the quote that he had right now
about havoc. Yeah.
Which I thought was incredibly valuable.
Well, what I can vamp for you while you're looking at it. One of the things he mentioned is in the NFL, the highest paid guys are the quarterbacks and the guys who chase the quarterbacks around, and how important it is to be able to provide pressure, something that they really, really struggled with the season before.
And so he was talking about this transition from the three-man front to the four-man front, and here's his quote. It says, what I love about the four-down system is you're playing with two traditional big defensive linemen, obviously a nose guard and a three-tech, but then you can play with a lot of different body types on the edge. They can vary from week to week in your opponent and who is going to get the lion's share of playing time, so it allows you to get a little bit more speed, a little bit more of a pass rusher on the field. And then he goes on to talk about the pass rushers. Avalos has a hybrid role. We've talked about it on the podcast before, this stud position, which is this edge linebacker hybrid, which is designed to get pressure on the quarterback. And when talking about the group of guys that they've got at the stud position, this is what Sonny had to say, quote, I love this group of pass rushers that we have. I think that that's going to be the biggest area of improvement for us is pressuring the quarterback. When you pressure the quarterback, that changes the game. All you have to do is look at the NFL, and the two highest paid positions, like you said, are the quarterback and the guy who pressures the quarterback. Obviously, those two areas are really important, and we're going to be able to throw a lot of different body types out there and guys who can run and guys who can be aggressive, and we can create some good matchups on the edge and also hold up against the run as a four down as well. And I think when you look back at the defensive deficiencies from the last 2 years, it's been pressure on the quarterback and getting gouged in the run game at the first level. And the fact that they spent all fall, they found a new scheme, a new coordinator, personnel to mitigate both of those deficiencies, that tells me that Sonny Dykes is paying attention. He's not resting on the success of 2022. He's pissed about 2023, and he made the necessary changes to improve this program in 2024.
You know, we were chatting with Jeremiah Donati after Sonny spoke, and he talked about how the hire of Andy Avalos kind of went under the radar because of when it fell in the schedule. And so, you know, this is a big deal for TCU, and that's kind of been emphasized not only from what Sonny Dykes said, from what staff have said, but the players too. This is a very different feel on the defensive side of the ball for these guys. They're excited about it. The proof will be in the execution. You know, we'll know August 30th. We'll start to have a really good idea.
We'll have much better knowledge, yeah.
But from a scheme perspective, this seems much more in line with what TC needs to be able to do on the defensive side of the ball to be competitive in the new look Big 12. And if nothing else, guys are really, really excited to play in it.
They really are. I mean, you talked to Caleb Fox today about the opportunities that he's had along the defensive line, the guys that they've brought in from the transfer portal. He was so energetic. You can see that video on Horned Frog Blitz and on the Frogs Insider YouTube channel, that interview with Caleb. Nnamdi Obiezor was the same way. He talked about the opportunities at the linebacker position in this scheme. He also talked about Cal transfer Caleb Elarms Orr, who is those two guys are probably going to be the starting linebackers on this defense, and that's a phenomenal duo to have at your second level, just as far as speed and athleticism is concerned. Everything about this scheme points to more aggression, more quarterback pressure, more consistently sound technique, and I just think that, we were talking about it earlier before we started recording. You have a defense that's just marginally better than it was last year, and you're probably talking about bowl eligibility, if not 7 or 8 wins. And the fact that they seem to have gotten to a really stable place so quickly. Obviously, we haven't seen the product actually on the field yet, but it makes you feel more confident in where this program is this year.
Well, Caleb talked a lot about how competitive things are at practice and how these guys are getting after it. And he said, if there's fights, there's fights. That's what it should be. But he said, but the difference with this group is that they might be fighting on the field, and then they're sitting next to each other in the locker room after practice laughing and cutting up. He's like, this is a group that there's a nastiness that's really been missing. And it's funny because, you mentioned Nnamdi. What a sweet kid he is off the field. So soft, so delightful. And I kind of mentioned, I was like, I'll tell you, Nnamdi, that during games on Saturdays, I don't think there's anyone whose name comes up more often because he will just lay people out. And he just kind of smiled and he's like, I like to hear that. And I'm like, he's just the nicest kid in the entire entire world, and you destroy people on Saturdays.
I think Abe Kamara would like that crown for himself.
That's
He's
true.
not here this
That's
week
true,
to ask,
yeah,
but
yeah.
one of the last times I talked to Abe, I was like, do you take pride in hitting people really hard? And he goes, I want to be the hardest hitting guy on the team. So the fact that we got a little competition and now an opportunity within this scheme to let those guys really cut loose is going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be really important just to have that aggressiveness and have that nasty streak. And I think that it brings, it lets Kaz Kazadi was so impactful in year one under Sonny Dykes and kind of disappeared in year two. But I think he's in a role now where he's really getting to kind of appeal to that side of things. So the defensive side of the ball, we're all really excited about. The offensive side of the ball still has a lot of questions. We had Mike Nichols here representing the offensive line. We also had Jack Besh and, of course, Josh Hoover. Let's start with the thing everybody's wondering about. We can say without a shadow of a doubt that as of today, in Sonny Dykes' opinion, and as of this season, in Josh Hoover's opinion, he is the starting quarterback for TCU football, unquestionably.
He said he's QB1. And when I asked Sonny Dykes, said, what are your expectations for Josh Hoover? Is he quarterback one? He said, yeah, as of today, he is. And so we have some confirmation on that. And we also got really good information from Josh and from Dykes what the expectations are for Josh Hoover this year, what his health is heading into fall camp. Was really good. You kind of got an impression that Hoover was fully healthy just because he's here this week. I don't know that they would have rolled him out at media days if he wasn't 100% ready to go. But the fact that he stood up and to you and to me and to other folks here said, I'm 100% healthy, I'm a full go. He's been working out. He's been participating in all the workouts. He's been throwing the football.
Yeah, he looks good.
He's moving great just walking around. It's really nice, I think, for TCU fans to not have a quarterback competition for the third straight offseason.
Yeah.
You know Josh Hoover is your guy. Sonny talked about his expectations and how he needs to protect the football more, how he's getting more in tune with Bryles in this offense, and that he expects him, as he said on the podium today, to be one of the best quarterbacks in the conference this year. That's a high standard, and it should be a high standard at TCU. But to hear your head coach talk that way about you has to be a confidence builder for Hoover as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that he goes in expecting to be the guy and has the confidence. I know there's been a lot of talk of people that don't believe he will be starting game one, but barring a setback or another injury, that it's Josh Hoover's job. And he gave a ton of credit to Ken Seals. He's super excited about Haas Haney, but he said, I'm the quarterback, and I'm not saying that to be braggy or anything like that. I'm the quarterback because it's my job, and I'm going to take it, and I fully expect it. And I believe him. I mean, he looks like he's ready to go. I learned while I was talking to him that this is he's never missed a practice his entire football career until this injury. And so one of the things I asked him about is, what are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again within reason? And, he talked about how he's been doing a lot of recovery. He's been working on red light therapy, a lot of deep tissue massage, the hot and the cold tub. He seems to have learned a lot from this setback, and I expect that he'll be doing everything he can to make sure that as avoidable as it is, that he won't put himself in this position in the future. But he also has a lot of confidence in the guys behind him, too. He talked about what a mentor Ken Seals has been and how excited he is about Haas. And I even asked him, I was like, is there a scenario, barring, not injury related, where you can see all three guys playing a role on this team this year? And he said, absolutely. And he's like, I'm rooting for those guys. I want everyone to get a chance to show what they can do.
And at the same time, I think that if we see Ken Seals or Haas Haney on the field, and it's not in like a blowout game situation.
I want a Haas Haney goal line package. I'm just saying.
Sure. In controlled instances like that, maybe. Because I think the last thing that you want when the quarterback room looks like what it looks like right now is to have a situation like you've had the last 2 years where a guy gets knocked out with injury. You have to go with your backup. The offense isn't fine-tuned for that guy, so you got to make some adjustments on the fly. Obviously, they responded much better in 22 than in 23. But this team will not accomplish what it wants to accomplish this year if Josh Hoover gets hurt again.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the biggest tests that we don't know the answer to yet is how does he respond now that he's been hurt when he's back in live fire again?
Yeah.
Because we saw, for better and for worse, how Chandler Morris played coming off of that leg injury. There were moments where the happy feet caught up with him, the quick decision-making turned into bad decision-making, and he wasn't his best on the field when, frankly, he could get hit. And, if we see the same thing from Josh Hoover, I don't think we will, but if we do, then this team isn't going to get where it wants to go, because this is the year where you've got to have all the pieces come together, and one of the biggest pieces ultimately is quarterback play.
Well, and the best friend to good quarterback play is a good offensive line, a good running game. I don't know that I feel any differently about the offensive line at the end of today than I did coming into it at the beginning. Did you learn anything in chatting with Mike that makes you feel better?
Yeah,
And Sonny didn't have a whole lot to say either.
That's probably still the biggest question mark. That's my takeaway from this week. What's not as big a question mark, Melissa, and someone that I think you're gaining some momentum on here, is running back.
Yeah.
Cam Cook had a great spring, showed some really impressive moments, and now you got to talk to Jack Besh about him today, and he spoke pretty highly of him as well.
Yeah, I asked Jack, who are some of the guys that maybe we haven't been talking about enough that you've noticed are going to stand out? And, he talked about Trey Sanders as well. Yeah. He said Trey looks great, and he's really excited about him. But he said Cam Cook is going to be a monster. Yes. And he looked right into the camera and said that. And he lit up talking about Cam Cook. I think, we're all hoping that Cam can be the guy. He kind of has to be the guy. There are some nice pieces around him. There is some depth, and there are some guys that can do some different things. But at the end of the day, if Cam Cook is not, a top half of the Big 12 running back, TCU is probably going to struggle. So I feel great about, first of all, I think Jack Besh is not a guy who's just going to say something to say something. He gives me a little bit of Garrett Wallow, as he's not going to speak out of turn, but he's certainly not going to lie. And I love that about him.
Something about those Louisiana boys.
Those Louisiana boys. So I'm excited about the way that Jack talked about Cam and what he's capable of and what he can do on the field. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player, and I'm excited to see him on August 30th and kind of get that start. Again, a lot of Cam Cook's success is going to depend on how good the offensive line and how quickly the offensive line comes together.
Yes, and that's what fall camp is for. They get Cade Bennett in, who wasn't here in the spring, the San Diego State transfer, who's probably one of the more experienced bodies along the offensive line. And what he can do from a guard position, I think will tell us a lot this fall about what this offensive line is going to look like. But really, that's what fall camp is for.
That's what fall camp is for, yeah.
And if they get it figured out, it'll probably be a pretty good offense. If they don't get figured out, probably won't be a very good offense.
Yeah.
You live and die by the trenches. Sonny Dykes knows that. That's why we've seen him focus so hard on the trenches in the portal and now in the high school ranks these past couple of years. And at some point, it's either going to pay off or you're going to have to keep searching.
Yeah, you mentioned the transfer portal. I asked Sonny Dykes about that as well and their philosophy and how it's changed. And one of the things he talked about is how many of those guys showed up in spring. You mentioned Cade Bennett, who's not going to arrive till the fall, but they really tried to get guys that could be there early. And I think that going back to the leadership and the continuity, I think that that's going to be a big impact on TCU's overall success as well. This is a time of year we're all undefeated. We all think we should be Big 12 champions. And Sonny said all the right things. If this team does what it's capable of doing, this can be one of the best teams in the conference. The question is now, can these coaches and can these players rally together in a way to get them to achieve at the highest level? They fell short of that time and time again in 2023. But it's a new year. It's a new season. It is a new conference in a lot of ways. And so it's an opportunity for Sonny Dykes to kind of decide what type of program TCU is going to be, not just in 2024, but for the next half of a decade, while they try to establish themselves as a power in a hanging on for dear life power conference.
Absolutely. I think my last takeaway from today is today felt a lot like a continuation of what we saw all spring, which was a renewed interest in details, a renewed interest in understanding that nothing is handed to you, and a renewed interest in putting in the work to get the outcome that you desire. And realistically, at this point in the year, that's all you can ask for from your football team, is that they're taking that right mental approach and approach on the football field. Now, whether the results bear out the way we all hope is yet to be determined, but I think that their approach in 2024 is vastly improved from their approach in 2023. And if you go back to right after that Oklahoma game, that really embarrassing way that they ended the season, I think it was in the post-game press conference, Sonny Dykes talked about taking a different approach to spring football. And now we'll see if it pays off.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, that we haven't really had a chance to touch on, but any administrator that we talk to around TCU, around the Big 12 Conference, they are very much in line with ensuring that TCU is going to be competitive. They are all in every way, shape, and form. And that means not just from a NIL perspective, not just from a fundraising perspective, but making sure that TCU as a university is well positioned to stay, above water here. They're not trying to tread water. They're really trying to soar. And I think that fans should be confident in TCU's leadership. They were all here. I mean, everybody was a part of this today, and they are all very much aligned. And that goes not just from the athletic side, but the academic side as well. And I think that is comforting in a time of so much uncertainty to know that TCU has its priorities straight. And that doesn't just mean throwing money at athletics. That means making really intelligent decisions, having the right conversations, meeting with the right people to ensure that TCU is always going to matter in college football and college athletics, and it's always going to matter as a university. And so I think it was really good to be able to have some of those conversations and hear the vision that this university has for its future, and to be a vision that positions TCU to be successful both on and off the field.
Yeah, TCU's got some really fun things on the university side that they're preparing to talk about a little bit more publicly. And like you said, the alignment that everyone talked about from top to bottom, TCU's doing everything in its power to put itself in the best position to be successful as an institution, both athletically and academically. And like I said, that's all you can ask for. Melissa, I think that'll just about do it though for this episode of Frogs Insider.
It's been a good day.
From Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas, home of the Oakland Raiders. Not as good as Jerry World.
The Las Vegas Raiders, but
now they're always the Oakland Raiders in my heart, and soon to be the home of the Oakland Athletics down the street as well. Sacramento Athletics.
Sacramento A's.
Anyways.
This has been a lot of fun. You guys, just like Jamie mentioned it earlier, our YouTube channel, our Instagram, our Twitter, on both of our personal Twitters, we have so much content coming out this week, not just from media days, but I had a conversation with someone about TCU tennis. You've talked to Coach Mo and Coach Campbell. There's so much coming in. We are ramping back up as we get ready for fall camp to kick off, not just with TCU football, but with all the other sports.
Absolutely. It's going to be a really good time to get on the Frogs Insider bus. It's a good time to subscribe over at hornfrogblitz.com. Make sure that you're getting your entire fix of not just football, but every single TCU program, because we do our best over here to cover everything top to bottom, and we're going to keep that going through the fall. So for Melissa Treebwasser, I'm Jamie Plunkett from Big 12 Media Days. This has been the Frogs Insider Podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.
Go Frogs.